Chernobyl disaster. Pripyat, Ukraine, Soviet Union, before the explosion. Soviet nuclear power designers and engineers, under the supervision of the Soviet government, decided to conduct a safety test of the emergency power system to see if the power plant's turbines would produce enough energy for the cooling pumps after a power outage. The Chernobyl experiment turned into a disaster for technical and human reasons, which we will discuss in detail below. 1_risk-prone design of the RBMK reactor. Main technical problem, in conventional reactors, reducing the cooling water would cause a decrease in power, but in the RBMK, reducing the water would cause more steam, and more steam would cause the reactor's power to suddenly increase. 2_disabling safety systems, fatal human error. To conduct the test they disabled the automatic shutdown system, Arizona 5. They cut off the emergency cooling pumps. It was like driving with the handbrake on. 3_excessive reduction of reactor power, management error. The test required the reactor to operate at 700 megawatts, but the operators were unable to control the power and it reached 30 megawatts, xenon poisoning mode. To compensate, they pulled out the control rods, which made the situation more dangerous. 4_political pressure to perform the test. Problem with the Soviet system. Soviet authorities wanted to prove that the RBMK was flawless. Anatoly Dyatlov, the test leader, continued the test despite warnings. Final reason: insufficient personnel training. Root cause: all these problems went hand in hand, and as a result on April 26, 1986 at 1:23 a.m., a huge explosion occurred. 2 people were killed in the initial explosion, then radioactivity spread. Local firefighters were immediately dispatched to the scene of the explosion. Local authorities initially kept the incident a secret, but the tragedy was beyond words. The next day, April 27, they began evacuating the city of Pripyat, which had a population of 50,000. The UN was unaware for 3 days until Sweden discovered unusual radiation. In the first week, soldiers were sent to clean up the city, and helicopters dropped sand and boron on the reactor to absorb radiation. In the following months, they began building a concrete dome to contain the destroyed reactor. A 30-kilometer exclusion zone was established. A health survey of the people in the contaminated areas began. In the following years, all RBMK reactors in the Soviet Union were shut down and compensation was paid to the victims. Next, they began construction of a new, complete dome. This structure will last up to 100 years. Valery Legasov was the first senior scientist at the scene to determine that there had been a reactor explosion, not just a fire. He exposed the fatal flaws of the RBMK at the 1986 Vienna Conference, against Kremlin orders. He committed suicide in 1988 under pressure from the Soviet system, but the tapes of his confessions left behind after his death shocked the world, and he was posthumously named a national hero of Russia. Excerpts from Legasov's confidential confession tapes. RBMK reactors were time bombs. We knew it, but we kept quiet. The party ordered us to lie. I did almost the same thing in Vienna. But my conscience wouldn't let me. If I kept quiet, another catastrophe would happen. This system will never change. They don't like the truth. A summary of Anatoly Dyatlov's fate. He was the night shift supervisor at Chernobyl's reactor number 4. He continued testing despite safety warnings and ordered the safety systems to be deactivated. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison in 2008. Following the accident, he denied any wrongdoing for the rest of his life, saying he was only following orders. He died in 1995 from radiation sickness. Valery Komachuk worked in the water circulation pump operators department at Reactor 4 and was the closest point to the explosion in the pump room at the time of the explosion. His body was never found. Those who went to the railway bridge after the explosion and watched the explosion all died. That bridge is known as the Bridge of Death. The government declared the restricted area temporary, but people never returned there. Cancer rates soar in Ukraine and Belarus. Most patients were children. Animals mutated. The true toll from Chernobyl was never revealed. Statistics suggest between 4,000 and 93,000 deaths. Today, there is still constant silence around 30 kilometers from the plant. Radiation levels in some areas have reached the permissible limit. But in some areas, such as under Reactor 4, there are still thousands of tons of radioactive molten fuel, as well as a red forest whose trees have turned orange. Now, only one-day visits to Pripyat are allowed with authorized tours. Children under 18 and pregnant women are prohibited. Some areas, such as the Reactor Control Room 4, are prohibited. Memorial to all veterans and veterans.